since we're still waiting one more for a quorum. Well, while we're waiting on that one, how about Amit? Well, I've been called a lot, but so I'm it now. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, if you don't, and I do appreciate the point of privilege here, and remember last meeting I actually presented a commendation. I actually wanted to present two of them today, but I think I'm only going to present one. And oh, I'm sorry, wrong one. This is for another person who has helped the city out for quite some time. I think he's been a great partner in Prattville, and actually I already probably gave some of that away since I said he and been here a long time, and I guess that'd be Mr. Bobby Nelson. 100 years is what I just heard. At least 6 mayors probably then too. But anyway, just go ahead and move along with this one. Just read this, and I hope you'll come down and accept it. It's whereas Mr. Bobby Nelson was appointed by Mayor C. Gray Price to serve on the Planning Commission on June 16, 1988. Whereas during Mr. Nelson's time on the Planning Commission, the city has seen an unprecedented amount of growth, and of course, he's not going anywhere. I want to make certain that's clear. He has a wealth of knowledge and is often considered to be the unofficial memory of the commission due to his lengthy tenure. And I do appreciate that because I need all the help I can get in that area too. Whereas Mr. Nelson has been active in many projects while serving on the Planning Commission, he was instrumental in the 1996 update to the Comprehensive Plan, the 1998 East Prattville Land Use Study, the 2010 Comprehensive Plan Project Prattville. And whereas Mr. Nelson continues to serve his community as an important member of the City of Prattville Planning Commission, and his continued dedication to serve the citizens of the City of Prattville is valued and appreciated. I therefore, Bill Gillespie, Mayor, City of Prattville, do hereby commend Bobby Nelson for his commitment to public service in the City of Prattville. Mr. Bobby, I certainly do appreciate that. I mean, a quick photo op, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Since my point of privilege is almost over, I will like to go ahead and say it. You know, I have learned so much while sitting here on the Planning Commission. Learned so much about do's and don'ts and why we're doing this and why we don't need to do that. And Mr. Bobby Nelson has helped me a long ways with that one. So thank you.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Prattville Planning Commission to order. Madam Secretary, could you call roll?
Mayor Gillespie. Here. Councilman Bowles. Chairman Smith. Vice Chair Gardner. Here. Chief Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Carpenter. Mr. Hall. Mr. McAuley.
Here.
Mr. Nelson.
Here.
And that's the call.
Okay. I believe we've got the minutes, or we're presented with the minutes for the January 16th meeting and with the February 20th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review said minutes?
I have, and I move that the minutes be approved as printed.
Is there a second?
A second.
There's a motion to approve and second. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. It carries. All right, there's no old business. It appears that the new business is resolution number 1. What we got right there? Yeah, we are. Would you? We want to. You guys? Okay. I'm just picking the season up. All right. We have a public hearing regarding this matter. And Joel, do you want to start off, or we going to have the applicant come up first? Okay. Would the applicant please come forward?
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Jurakis with Goodland Mills Kaywood.
Okay.
And your first, you have a public hearing on a proposed rezoning. on a property at 2578 Cobb's Ford Road. The owner is the estate of Marjorie Cobb, Dorothy Jones, and Ginger Jones. The property, to orient you to this map, Cobb's Ford Road is here, Interstate 65 to the east. To the west is the Target Shopping Center and Redfield Road. And Redfield Road extends from Cobb's Ford all the way down past the entrance to this residential subdivision. The Robert Trent Jones Golf Course borders the property to the south. There's a power company transmission line that goes in a north-south direction on the eastern boundary of the property. And there is an existing sanitary sewer line that traverses through the property. Okay. The Prattville city limits sort of splits the property in half. The northern portion and the portion within the proposed B2 zoning is within the corporate limits of the city of Prattville, as is a portion abutting the interstate. Okay. So the proposal for rezoning is this 33-acre parcel. In the overall sketch plan for the 136 acres that is owned by the estate, we have two quadrants that are undevelopable due to topography and site drainage, and they're indicated in blue. We're recommending or showing a 20-acre apartment parcel directly behind the commercial parcel, and it would be serviced off of Redfield Road. And then the remaining portion of that property, about 60 acres, would go into single-family residential. We're showing 60 and 70-foot wide lots. And the total number of lots shown in this layout is just under 200. I think it's 199. This area we're showing as a buffer between the power company's transmission line and the interstate. Again, steeply sloped, less desirable for residential type development. The second item is a sketch plan, is the review of this sketch plan. So,
All right.
questions?
There is a stub in by the raceway station and up on, off of Cobb's Ford, up there.
Yes. This is public, and it's called Cobb Boulevard. It's adjacent to the gas station.
Right, yeah.
And then there's also another easement right here adjacent to the hotel.
Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Any idea what kind of impact this might have on traffic? It looks like there's quite a few possibilities for traffic concerns
Yes, a
in my
traffic
eyes.
study has not been prepared to date. There are no specific proposals for the commercial apartment or residential developments. So it has not been prepared at this time.
In the commercial district, is there anything specific that you had a concentration of what may go in that commercial district, the zoning? Or did you have an idea or clue of what may go in that area?
We have interested parties interested in just the commercial portion of this property, as well as some parties who are interested in the entire 136 acres. But we do not have a specific proposal to put forth as to, exactly how many square feet of retail might be developed there. What we would anticipate is that it would be consistent with the quality that you see in the adjacent retail center.
Anything else at this time?
I think the only other comment I would share is the B2 zoning that we're showing in this 33 acres is the same zoning that's immediately adjacent in the Target shopping center area.
I have a question concerning it's actually a sketch plan question. which
Yeah,
is not-
we're combining them together, so that's fine.
Is that, and Chief over here said the same thing, that I think certainly we're going to ask for another road into the residence part of this. I mean, we're getting, we're not going to want all of that to be serviced from Redfield Road, I guess is where I'm coming from.
Okay.
And I imagine that Joel's already addressed that with you, so.
And we reserve judgment as to what the traffic study tells us as to how to accomplish that.
I understand. And I'm good with that, that's fine.
That's good.
Because we have very limited options as to where to take that traffic.
That was why I asked the question about the stub in, so, yes, I understand.
Thank you. Joel? Are you, anything? You?
Questions?
Or did you have any more? I'm sorry. Any more? All right. I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Try to provide some clarification on how the city is looking at this property. Mr. Rakis did a very good job of outlining the situation. This is, of course, the last quadrant of this Bass Pro Legends Parkway Cosford intersection that's developing. You've seen some past development there of this Cobb property with the roughly 5 lots that were developed about 10 years ago there along the Cosford Road frontage. A couple of you have touched on what is the major concern, and that is traffic, and it generally being focused back to Cosford Road. We're up against 2 hard borders here. On the east, you have the interstate. To the south, you have the Robert Trent Jones Golf Course. There will never be any access provided to this property from those directions. So we are really looking at how do we provide better access to the west, and we do have some general connections that were set up there, basic connections that were set up running through the Eastwood subdivision and connecting back at some point to Legends Office Park. Obviously, we would like to see limited amount of traffic. That's a secondary pathway through that neighborhood, but you will have some connectivity between Redfield Road and Legends Office Park. But by and large, you're going to see traffic focus back to this intersection at some point. So, as you've seen in the staff report, the majority of the comments coming both from the planning department, from engineering, have to do with wanting to understand better the traffic impacts. I believe that certainly the applicant, petitioner, they understand that is they would like to have better information on that as well. It would help them to understand when they're marketing the property, help them be able to explain to folks that may be interested in the property what kind of requirements are going to be expected of them from the public standpoint. As far as the land uses that are proposed, the land uses presented are consistent with your plan. If you look at the 2010 comprehensive plan, future land use, the area that is shown as retail, commercial, or general business matches up well with what we show on that map. The area that is outside the city limits, you have to look at the larger extended land use map, and you'll see that is shown as mixed use transitional. And that is a category that was kind of set up to deal with changes in the market, where there is a need to be very flexible with our land use designations, because the old style separation, hard separation between land uses has kind of faded away. People are interested in living somewhere where they can access commercial uses without having to necessarily drive. They're interested in working closer to where they live. So that category of transitional fits this area very well. That land use designation could accommodate the apartments that are proposed as well as the lower density single family residential. That designation could also support some type of commercial if they wanted to extend it further south. We appreciate in the sketch plan that they are looking at these difficult to develop areas and are certainly willing to stay away from them. How those areas end up as far as ownership in the end, that's something we would need to discuss ways down the road when we are looking at subdivisions. The area between the power line easement, the interstate, they're leaving that as a vegetated buffer in the sketch. We believe that is an appropriate use of that area. Certainly, if you're going to use this area to the south for residential, you need to provide some screening away from the interstate, which can be not just a visual intrusion, but certainly a sound intrusion over time. So leaving that vegetated buffer there is a very good aspect of this sketch plan. The question that may come up, certainly when we start talking about zoning and timing of zoning, is whether or not it's the appropriate time to zone any of this property in this fashion. The only discussion that has come up over the last couple of years is about the timing of zoning property for commercial. The analysis that we've done for y'all and for others who have requested it show that we have a good bit of property zoned general business that is completely undeveloped. Okay. The best estimate is we have about 340 or so acres that are undeveloped. Just for scale purposes, the size of the town center shown here is 30 acres. So now the question that's going to come up is whether or not that is an area of concern. That is certainly can be looked at in several different ways, and I tried to explain some of that in the staff report that you received before the meeting. If the board believes the timing is appropriate, then this is the appropriate zoning for this property. Okay, there's no question that the property should be zoned, that it should eventually be used for some type of general business. I think the general question is whether or not the timing of the zoning will have some impact on property that's already out there. That has not been a question that the commission has wanted to get into in the past very much, but it's also been basically a situation where property has been absorbed about as fast as it can be zoned. So I'd be glad to go into that further. I just wanted to make you aware of that and also to try to address some questions that had been presented to our department in the past. Again, back to the sketch plan in general, traffic. We keep going back to that word. Traffic impact is the main concern from the city staff's standpoint, and how much this development, just to give you some perspective, what we're looking at is, again, this is 30 acres. The town center shown on this map is also 30 acres. So you understand the impact. We've seen the impact of that center on traffic. We would need to understand the impact of this area. I'm not saying that this will be another town center. It may not develop at that level of intensity, but it could under this zoning. So we need to understand traffic a little bit better and the impacts that will come to Cobb's Fork Road. A question that came up during the staff review is the improvements we made in 2007. What capacity level were those set at? Those improvements did not take this property into account because there was no way to classify it. There's no way to determine at that time, given what we knew of this property, what would happen here. The improvements that were put in 2007 accounted for town center, accounted for all three quadrants of this intersection, plus some growth in commuter traffic or through traffic on that roadway. Cosford Road, as you well know, serves not only access to this commercial property, but it is basically the end of the commuter route to Montgomery. Okay? So we're certainly seeing an increase in the amount of traffic using the 14 interchange, but by and large, the vast majority of commuter traffic in Prattville comes through Cosford Road. So the design and what was built in 2007, those improvements, they were set up to basically accommodate some growth, but not the total amount of growth you may see from this development. So, be glad to answer any questions at this point, Mr. Smith. You may want to go ahead and dispense with the public hearing since we've covered the issues and then come back for further discussion.
That will work. Is there anybody in the public who would like to address this issue? All right, very well. Does anybody have any questions or read it in? Would you care?
Close the public hearing.
Well, then I'm going to close the public hearing, or I guess we need to make a, are you making that as a motion?
Just close it.
All right, we close it. And we can go ahead and, you want to read it in for me? Thank you.
Resolution rezoning FAR to B2, 2578 Cobbs Ford Road, the estate of Marjorie Cobb and Dorothy Jones, petitioner, March 20th, 2014. Whereas the estate of Marjorie Cobb and Dorothy Jones are the owners of the property described in Attachment A and shown in Attachment B, and whereas the property to be rezoned is located inside the city limits at 2578 Cobbs Ford Road, and whereas the petitioner wishes to rezone the property from FAR, Forest, Agriculture, and Recreation to B2, General Business, and whereas a public hearing on the proposed zoning was held by the Prattville Planning Commission on March 20, 2014, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Prattville Planning Commission hereby recommends the rezoning of said property from FAR to B2. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, is there a second? There's been moved and second. Seconded by, we've got that. Any discussion? Go
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ruben. You got it.
Mr. Duke, I have a couple of questions for you. This development, how is that going to affect the Cooters Pond transfer station, and what size trunk line do we have already? What's the capacity of it?
Mr. Gardner, I can't answer the size of I guess the question you're asking about is the line running through the property or the eventual?
The eventual line, with the trunk line that we have in place presently, will it afford this development? And how is this going to affect the Cooters Pond transfer station? Pine Creek.
Yeah. Mr. Gardner, if it's okay, I'm going to broaden your question just a little bit because what we need to look at is how the Pine Creek wastewater plant is. This is the same discussion we had when we were talking about the Glenbrook subdivision sketch plan. The best estimation from the wastewater department is that there will be a point at which the capacity in the Pine Creek plant will be exceeded by the development that is forecast for the remainder of the basin. This property, as well as the Glenbrook subdivision we've talked about in the past, and frankly, the majority of the land that is still vacant and expected to develop over the next 10 years is in the Pine Creek wastewater plants basin. The wastewater department at this point is looking very seriously at updating a plan. There was a plan done in 2003 that presented options and laid out a time period when that plant may be exceeded, and it's really not a date certain. It's when you reach this level of flow into the plant, then you're going to exceed the capacity. And it was shown at that time that a full build out of the basin cannot be accommodated by the plan as it's built today. So plans are underway as to how to expand the plant and be set up to accommodate growth. I think maybe a better way to look at your question is if this were all to develop today in vacuum, meaning it was the only piece of property developing, we could accommodate it. If you take into account other developments that are going on, there will be a point for everybody when wastewater and the ability to treat that wastewater will become a problem. So we're trying to stay ahead of that. The city is trying to address that. I think it is important when we talk about sketch plan, though, that we try to make everybody aware that there is a point at which that capacity will be exceeded. Does that take care of try to
That's
address
the
your?
point I was trying to make,
Yes.
is that at some point in time, the way we're developing here in the city of Prattville, that it's going to reach its capacity pretty quick, I think. But you pretty much answered my question.
That's right. It is definitely something we are looking at. It's something that we're actually moving forward on. The interesting piece, and the board will find this interesting, is that the market has changed appreciably since we looked at the 2003 study. Most of the basin was slated to be a little lower density development than what reality is showing. Okay, Glenbrook subdivision is a good example. Instead of 75 and 90 foot wide lots, we're looking at somewhere between the 40 and the 65 foot wide lots, which means your density increases appreciably. You're seeing a good bit more apartment demand than we were seeing in 2003. So we're taking all of that into account in the update to that plan for the Pine Creek Basin.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Traffic study, who, when, how, who pays for it, all of the above.
Well, let's, and I certainly welcome Mr. Durakis to step back up if I start to move too far out of line. But traffic study generally is paid for by the developer. Certainly, the city may participate if we see a need to. If there's a scope that needs to be expanded to look at other roads that may not be directly impacted by this one single development. And the reason I say that is that what we're looking at here, because of the commuter traffic, may not be just this development. So we can certainly look at how that would be handled. You can certainly do a traffic study at this point where you're looking at the whole piece of property, or you can wait until there's some better defined use on these properties. If you do it at this point, then you're going to have to start making assumptions, very much like the wastewater study we did. We made some assumptions at that point. Those assumptions have proved to be a little bit off. And generally, when you make assumptions at this point, you have to make worst-case scenario assumptions. So, and I think that would be a very valid study if we did that. Or you can wait until there's some better definition of what's going to happen on this property. Okay, whether it's something akin to the town center comes in, that's going to be a larger impact. If a piece of this gets sectioned off and becomes apartments later on, or it becomes becomes a somewhat lower intensity commercial use, then there may not be as much traffic impact. It's hard to say what would happen here. There's a lack of frontage, lack of Cosford Road frontage for this piece that we're talking about, and in my opinion, that will have some impact on the type of retail that goes in there. But you could just as easily get a big box that went there, and it would run your traffic numbers way up. So that sounds like a very non-committal answer, doesn't it?
I think it was.
So, I mean, it can certainly be done at this point.
Maybe I should ask her.
Sure.
I'm being facetious. Excuse me, Joel.
Mr. Adams, yes, and your thoughts, please.
We agree with Joel's proposition that the developer, meaning the commercial real estate developer who chooses to develop the 33-acre parcel, is the one who's responsible for the traffic study. Okay? And at that time, he will have a profile of how many square feet of retail, certainly a range that he would want to put at that location, and have some sense of how he intended to arrange it, and therefore you can look at the traffic impacts as it's related to that. At that time, that study can also model what happens south of the commercial development. But again, it's entirely possible that there are different property developers doing different land uses, and they have different demands. There are different traffic demands generated by the apartments and the housing as opposed to a commercial land use.
Okay. I think I heard both you and Joel say not now. That's what I heard.
You heard me not now.
I heard you not now, and I think
that
that's
was
what
a
Joel said
it was a
indirectly too.
definitive not now from
But, okay.
Kathy, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
If you do it now, there are going to be some assumptions that are going to have to be made. There's no issue with doing it now, in my opinion. You're just not going to have. You may do more than is necessary to accommodate that property, but you're going to identify in any traffic study those different levels of need. You know, a good traffic study is going to say, well, if it builds out at the maximum impact that you could have on this property, this is going to be your impact to roadway. If it builds out at something lesser, then this is going to be the impact, and this is what you're going to have to do. So you can certainly do it at this point. If you don't do it at this point, there certainly needs to be some contribution towards that study somewhere. That would be the city's position on that. Is that
Okay.
and it could be that. Let me back up. The other area where we have some concern in the sketch plan is there's not much definition of how roadways will run through this property, and I think that's a natural point for the developer to be at. Is that, excuse me, the owner to be at, is that they're not the developer, so they don't want to encumber a piece of property with a roadway that might could go someplace else. But I think at a minimum you're going to have to see connections here and here, Cobb Boulevard, and this access easement that runs beside the Hampton Inn. And we certainly would like to see that run through the property, touch the apartments, and I know Chief Johnson would like to see it touch the backside of the residential.
So would Roy.
I think you're going to need to make those assumptions in the sketch plan. Now, there's enough flexibility here that how those roads run through the property can be an open question. But I would certainly think you need to lay down some markers that there's going to have to be use of those access points. We cannot. Any traffic study would tell you we can't send all that traffic back to this point.
Sure.
Otherwise,
I guess that's obvious. And that's, I understand this is a sketch plan, but I think, okay, as a minimum, you got to show a connection up somewhere else. Just a matter of fact.
We're going to move on. Mayor?
Thank you. really what I just have a lot of concerns of is pretty much what has been commented from up here, and I'm going to just sum it all up in one little comment, I guess, is we really know how everything is going to be flowing. Now, sometimes the cars, how they're going to be flowing is a little bit easier to see and understand than maybe how the sewer lines are all there. We don't really know what impact this is going to have on our wastewater plant. We don't, at this point in time, I don't know what size sanitary sewer lines are up underneath there. And, you know, there's so many different variables. We do have a general idea of what they're looking at, but nobody knows about what's going to go on truly in the future. Now, this is where what they're perceiving that it might possibly happen. As I mentioned earlier, before really the meeting started, is that this body, I think, I know they've taught me a lot, but I know we've learned a lot from a lot of things that have happened out there. Greencrest, very straight, pretty area out there, but we've had a lot of traffic challenges because it is so straight. There is no curb, and a lot of those things seem to be very minor, but whenever you live it day in and day out, sometimes the little things that sometimes if you're not able to really know about at this point in time, it's very difficult to vote on. At this point in time, I'd really like to see if we had some kind of committee study on this before we have a developer or landowner or anybody else go ahead and start spending a lot of money. I'm not talking about a very in-depth time or monetary costly event, but I do think that to me it would be great for us to do a little more, afford us the time to do some kind of due diligence study from this part for both traffic and sanitary sewer movement.
We can do that. Well, I think the fire, or feelings on subcommittee? Go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
Well, I guess to me that, you know, this is obviously the proper zoning.
Right.
And they got to get the proper zoning before they can really go out and market it to a developer. And so this is a step in the process. Now there's the bigger discussion of whether there's too much commercial property in Prattville, and you can argue, well, that's a planning commission question or a city council question.
Well, if you're wanting to develop,
And I don't know that I know the answer to that.
Sure.
if we're looking at this as two separate things, the rezoning or, and you're right with, if your agreement with changing it versus wanting to go to subcommittee for the sketch plan. Is that what you're
That's what
attempting to say?
I would
I'm
like
more
to.
concerned about the sketch plan.
Yes, that's what I'd like to see. Let's go ahead and get it zoned properly.
Okay.
At least make
And
some
that,
progress.
Then, well, let's,
and then,
do I have a motion to,
okay, well, you got the motion on
or
the
let's
floor
vote on the,
to
or
approve the
let's do
rezoning.
The vote. Call for the vote? Or let's call for the vote? We'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the estate of Marjorie Cobb and Dorothy Cobb petitioner so far? So now-
Rezoning,
Rezoning, signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Let's move on to the next agenda item, which is the sketch plan.
Somebody read it in.
Yes. Let's see here. Dallas, can you read that in for me? Yes.
Okay, let me do that.
Yeah, he's reading it right now. He's reading it.
Resolution sketch plan, the estate of Marjorie Cobb and Dorothy Jones, March 20th, 2014. Whereas the estate of Marjorie Cobb and Dorothy Jones are the owners of the estate of Marjorie Cobb and Dorothy Jones property, and whereas the proposed development is located inside the city limits at 2578 Cobbsford Road, and whereas the required city departments heads have reviewed and commented on the proposed sketch plan, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Prattville Planning Commission hereby gives its favorable review of the submitted sketch plan of the estate of Marjorie Cobb and Dorothy Jones property. I move.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion. I believe it was discussed that there be a subcommittee.
I agree.
I believe we need fire department representation on that subcommittee.
I I was afraid of that.
And, Boy, would you be willing to be on it? All right. I will. I'll have anybody else, and I'll do it. So it'll be the three of us. We will get with Joel.
All right, we need to move that this be held in some form or fashion.
All right. Does that,
How do we do that parliamentary wise, Joel?
I think that you just made a motion to hold it.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
got to
if the
address
chair recognizes Mr. McCauley's motion, that's,
Yes,
you get
I
a
believe-
second, that's great.
If I get a second on, no, we have a second. All in favor of holding it for subcommittee? Opposed? Let's move on to item number
Thank you.
3. Thank you, Pam. We will get with you. All right. On item number 3, there's going to be a public hearing. Is the petitioner available for item number 3? Mr. Gillen?
He got to put the road in, I don't care what he's saying. Doesn't matter. He got to put the road in.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Greg Dillon with Larry Speaks and Associates. And on behalf of the developers and the builders who are all here with us today to discuss any questions that we may have. What we're seeking for is a rezoning of this area in the back northwest quadrant of the development from an R3 to an R5 zone. When we originally started the development out, it was basically all R3 up in the front with R5 back in the back. And over time, based on development concerns and as the economy has affected, the front half over here on the very front right was changed to R5. And an R5 section was added to this area. And we've had some issues with soils based on having to build the recent road across this particular area right here. And this bad soil area is running through here, and it's causing us a problem developing lots in this particular area. So over the time, and this is since 2005, we've had those type changes, and we've also lost several lots through this area. Basically, we're at somewhat about the same lot count we were in the beginning after this particular change right here was made. And at this point in time, we're just seeking for a rezoning that helps us somewhat recover some of the loss of lots that we've had to this point. And, we're here to answer any particular questions you may have. The owner has taken this plan and has submitted it to the homeowners association with the community, and they've gone over these particular issues, and they're well aware of what we're presenting today. We'd like to answer any questions you have. And like I said, the developer and the builder is here today.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, absolutely.
Ms. Gillen, how many lots have you lost?
Well, it depends how you look at it sometimes. Originally, we had a layout coming straight through the adjacent property and a street coming straight up through here. And at one count, it's 10 to 15 lots, depending on how you look at it. And what we've done is this street used to wrap down to this point and come over. We've pushed it up, and we've totally deleted that particular section right there.
Okay.
But with the change that we're doing, we're basically at roughly the same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions for Mr. Gillen? Yes, sir. You look like you have something. Anything for Mr. Gillen? Joel?
I'm not sure if Mr. Gillen covered the changes to the sketch, did you?
I thought this was for the rezoning, so I
Right,
didn't
and-
cover all this cases.
They're married.
We're married, so we'll have them, we'll kind of have them together. If you,
And I'll be glad to let Mr. Gillen cover that before I
okay.
jump in
Do you
there.
have anything else, Mr. Gillen, on the other?
Let me flip it over.
Okay.
Now, with the sketch plan revisions, what we're trying to do here is we're really trying to avoid this particular area right here. When it comes to building a city street across that area, our costs are escalated extremely. We entertained that, and we actually worked in this particular area where the the bad soil areas were a little bit shallower. We're expecting a deeper replacement material cost here, where we're having to pull the mucky material out, bring in a sandy type material, and then bring it up with some good fill material so that we can actually build a road that stands the test of time, which is exactly what we had to do over here. But in an effort to avoid this, what we would like to do is build the cul-de-sacs and then provide an emergency access, pedestrian type access that would cross to connect the cul-de-sacs together. And what we propose is like a 12-foot path, and we would still build that path to city standards because the fire department would have to have access. So that, say, what we propose is to put bollards on each end. They're removable type bollards. And so they could be easily removed. The fire department could make passage through that particular area, but through the remainder of the time, and hopefully they would never have to be removed, but through the remainder of the time, it would be open to the public and actually give access to this green space area that connects back into this pond area that's been built over the years. And with that, in our discussions with the city personnel, if we were going to delete this particular area as a permanent road, that we'd also, in that turn, provide an access to the north. And that was purposely to offset any particular access issues due to this being somewhat constrained, except for emergency access.
Bobby?
Greg, how many feet is it from that loop down there back to where you could come around? Yeah, from there coming around. See, if you had a problem in that area that you need emergency.
From this loop right here?
No, the other way.
R5.
The R5, where R5 is up there. Up the top right. Top right.
Outside,
Right there.
Yeah.
Right in there. All right, say if somebody was living close to that cul-de-sac and had a problem getting to it,
This is
yeah.
about 300 feet right here, and then this short block right here is right at 300 feet.
About 600 feet, no.
Yeah, from here to here.
What about down to the bottom of it? Right there. That's what I was concerned about. Is all of that over 8?
500 feet. And actually, we've got that in a loop area right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So actually, we have a loop section here, so that was a fairly short road.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Is it too late to cut across? Have you already got something built? Pull down to the very bottom where the emergency lane that you've got proposed. Now go follow it up, right there. It's too late to go west from there, isn't it?
We've already built it.
That's what I was afraid of.
We had that thought also. Okay.
Any other question?
Where are the prospects of this subdivision growing, like westward or northward? And maybe that's a Joel question, not a Mr. Gilman question. So,
Purely speculation.
well, I want somebody to speculate then.
Okay.
Yeah.
To the north, and I'm not sure we put it in your packet, but we've been talking about this for a while, so everybody is pretty much aware that to the north is it's a leg of the city's South Industrial Park. And at some point, I know the mayor would like for it to be sooner, and I agree with him, there will be a road that comes back to US 82 that will run through the industrial park. In fact, it will run very close to this. So I think the northern access is realistic. Timing is something that I can't speak to at this point. That road is not programmed. It is planned. It is we have a budget for it, but as far as programming when it's going to be built, I can't speak to it. The property to the just to make sure everybody's aware, the property to the east is the Auburn University Experimentation Station. They have made no indication of ever leaving that site. In fact, I think there's been a strong push over the years to keep them there. So that's not an option. And again, all of these points have been discussed in the earlier sketch plan, so we're not adding anything new. But to the west, there is a similar, almost a duplicate of this piece of property as far as depth. the owners, when this property was under initial consideration, the owners of that property made it very clear they were not looking to develop. I have not heard anything otherwise at this point. So a time frame of when it would develop, nobody's aware of that. Oftentimes we have adjacent properties where sketch plans have been presented. That's not the case here. There's no indication of a desire to develop it. Property could change tomorrow, but not likely.
Any other discussion?
I have a question. That 82, about how far is that from that stub out? What's the distance?
How far is the stub out to?
82,
US
Highway 82. Approximately.
Quarter of a mile, I think Joe's about right.
About a quarter of a mile? Okay, and the property to the west, wasn't that an old gravel pit or something like that one time?
Yes, I believe the Watkins property has been used for some mining in the past.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other? Go ahead.
Just comment on something. In accordance with the Fire Code, Chapter 5, and also Appendix D of the Fire Code, basically stipulates that emergency access roads are supposed to be a minimum of 20 foot and engineered in a manner that was capable of withstanding the weight of your largest apparatus. Now, I mean, and the unfortunate thing is that particular section of the code doesn't, from the fire code standpoint, give me a whole lot of leniency, nor can I speak for the state, which has the same thing adopted. Is there any way that we can maybe address how that road is put into place so that the city gets the width that I think the city, based on my conversations with the other disciplines within the city, and maybe some concessions on how we do this road, that we get the width and it not be such a maintenance problem to some degree, and
What we proposed was I believe it's a 12-foot road, and built to city standards. It is a city street, except for the width that we're talking about. And what you're telling me now is we'd have to have 20 feet to make that work. So we're proposing to build the street that stands the test of time, because you've got to get your equipment in and out. So, you know, we're through here, we're just trying to take this width and squeeze it down to where it is the minimal as possible, because the wider it is, the more we've got to dig it out. But if you can allow us at 20 feet, then at least we're not having to go to 30 and 35 feet, which again, it keeps running our cost up.
well, in that case, maybe my question needs to go to Joel then, because like I said, by the fire code is one thing, but I have to recognize that my code is not the only code out there, and that would be city ordinances.
Well, to build it as the sketch plan shows at this point would be a variance from the city's subdivision regulations as well as your fire code. Now, I don't think your fire code is pretty hard and fast and can't be varied. What you'd be looking at is to meet the minimum fire code, and then from that point you'd be looking at a variance of the subdivision regulations, which requires the connection, the lack of requires connectivity. You can't have the dead end street that's basically shown here. The commission has the ability to grant variances, but just like the Board of Zoning Adjustments, you need to make sure that there's some kind of defined hardship, and it's not a hardship that is common to everybody else. You know, every developer is going to need to build a road. Is there something unique about this piece of property that creates an undue burden on the developer? There's a good bit of subjective, good bit of judgment in that decision. So, you know, the discussion we're having here is pretty much the concerns that the staff has, is that we would, of course, like to see that connected. There would not be an issue. It would be consistent with the already approved sketch plan. The access road that's shown, we've had over the years history with emergency access roads, and they are difficult to maintain once they're in. Okay, whether it's the bollards get knocked over and the neighbors are using it as a thoroughfare to get from, if I live here and that path has become open in some way, I'm going to take it. I mean, most people are that way.
Most bollards the city puts out, if they're not locked and keyed, then they're gone.
Yeah, and then there's the other practical side of there'll be a Knox box or something like that to put a key in close by. But what if that's not there when the fire department needs it? So they're going to have to check that. That's an additional expense on their part, and then that's going to have to be maintained just like a street. It can't be kept as a pathway.
It's got to be straight.
So those are the situations that come up with emergency access that are they appear to be a satisfactory answer when we're talking about them here, but in practice they're very difficult to maintain.
Yeah.
Show me what we're considering rezoning today, please. Let me make sure I got this straight in my head.
Shows a little better on this side.
It's that portion over there.
It's this area that they've got with the red R5 on it is essentially this quadrant here.
Okay. All right.
Stops the
It's
edge of the subdivision, catches this.
currently R3.
In the north half of the northern street is already R5.
Okay. All right. So they are connected but not connected.
Okay. The street terminates here.
Right.
Not approved.
Yep.
All
Okay.
of this plus this plat here, so you have these two plats on each side.
I don't have a problem with the rezoning part. The rezoning kind of connectivity.
Yeah, let's get public comments.
All right. Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to make a statement on this issue in the public, in the gallery? Any comments? Please come forward and register with Ms. Morgan. Tell her who you are.
If we allow rezoning but don't work with the sketch plan, aren't we gonna shoot ourselves in the foot like you? I don't see how we can. Nail it down all at once.
All right.
Philip Goodwin, and we're the builder out there with Goodwin Building Company. I just wanted to clarify one thing real quick, and that we've had 2 homeowners associations meetings within the last month, and when we started building out there, we built up a Facebook page with the homeowners. We've been very active in helping the homeowners come together, cure some issues out there that they were having in terms of just people playing by rules, taking care of the yards, and have gotten them very active. Had this posted for a while, answered all the questions, try to be as upfront constantly with them as much as possible throughout anything that we do, as a positive influence on the neighborhood. So I just wanted to make sure y'all were aware that we've had these meetings and had this posted in numerous different ways. That's all I wanted to.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this matter? On the zoning issue of this, not the sketch plan, but the zoning. We ready for a vote?
Well,
Yes,
before
sir.
we do, may I ask, is it going to be feasible to separate the rezoning from the sketch plan as far as, do we need resolution on both sides of this house? In other words, if we, and it's just my own ignorance, but I'm asking because I don't know, if we address the rezoning without also having an idea what direction we're going with the sketch plan, are we going to be in a situation where we've approved something without a way to back up what we long range want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're not going to accept that sketch plan. I think that's a given. All right, and I mean, he's going to have to build a road. I mean, I think we're there. And his question is, okay, what happens if we approve the rezoning, don't approve the sketch plan? Where are we?
Well,
Let's go ahead and close the public hearing if there's no other comments. And then we will, this has been read in.
No, not yet, but anyway.
It is not.
All right, okay. But go ahead, Joel. The public hearing's closed.
The chair is welcome to rearrange the agenda
All right, that's fine.
and deal with items in a different order. So if it's the pleasure of the commission, you could deal with the sketch first. You just close the public hearing
Right.
for the rezoning. You don't necessarily have to take it up first. You could take up the sketch first,
Okay.
if that's what you wanted to do. Or you could read it in and then make a motion to hold it for a second and then come back. It's however y'all want to address
Yeah,
that.
I guess that the question still is,
Yeah, it doesn't
what
matter.
if we, and it doesn't matter what order we do it in, if we approve the rezoning, and it goes to R3, and of course, we have not approved the preliminary plat, but are we hung if we winds up, he develops all this over here on the west side first, and if we got the same problem that we've created for ourselves as it
I see what you're saying.
I guess I guess I don't think so, but I'm trying to think out loud.
If you don't have I
mean, we've approved the sketch plan of the west side anyway, haven't we already?
you have, but again, your sketch plan really is also looking not only at the road layout, but the number of lots and how they're configured. So the zoning, in my opinion, has some bearing on the sketch. Certainly I think the applicant would prefer to have all these questions answered at this point and not get surprised somewhere down the road. I mean, it sounds to me like there are serious questions about the sketch, but it doesn't sound to me if there's a road connection, then there may not be a zoning question. If there's not a road connection, there might be a zoning question.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So,
If the applicant would just agree to put the road in, this would all be simple.
I can't speak for them. So, however you wish to address it so that you're satisfied, you can adjust the order of these items on your agenda, Mr. Chair, if you feel
All right.
it's appropriate.
Let's do sketch plan first.
Then we're going to do the sketch plan first. We will read the sketch plan in.
Well, what if you approve it, ask Hunter, then you just go ahead and see, because if we vote it down, then how do we turn around and vote it back up?
I think, let's get it on the record, and let's just ask him.
All right. Let's read this. Can you, Mr. Nelson, can you read in the sketch plan?
Number 4, Bobby.
Number 4, Bobby.
Where's that?
No.
This is here.
Number 4.
Number 4.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
Resolution sketch plan revised, the Oaks of Buena Vista, March 20, 2014. Whereas John Parker is the owner of Oaks of Buena Vista, and whereas the proposed development is located inside the city limits of County Road 4, and whereas the initial sketch plan of the Oaks of Buena Vista was approved on January the 5th, 2006, and whereas the required city development, the department heads have reviewed and commented on the revised sketch plan. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Prattville Planning Commission hereby gives its favorable review of the submitted revised sketch plan of the Oaks of Buena Vista. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second it, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Discussion. I think we've had it.
I mean, I know where I am, and I know where.
I believe there's a couple of people here that feel the same way on that. Are y'all willing to put in the road?
Which road are we talking about?
The road that goes between the golf cart path road.
Yeah,
You're talking about,
Right.
talk about that, yes,
but basically just stick it with our original sketch plan.
yes.
Yes, make that a full road. Curb and gutter.
Basically just sticking with our original sketch plan.
Yeah, if we can get lots on either side of it.
Well, I mean,
it's a
I don't-
full improved
yeah.
road at that point.
Right. I don't know about the lots, but
obviously an expense that we'll have to bear.
Yeah, I understand. So, yes, sir, Joel.
I mean, we can hold a sketch plan and let them decide later. We do not have to decide today.
No,
Yeah.
you don't. One of the points that we've made, and we certainly made in our comments back to the applicants, is that it really hasn't been reviewed completely, but we could probably look at some kind of modified road section if they're not going to be lots fronting that roadway. If it's just going to be a connection that runs through, how many feet is that, Greg? 300 feet of no lots fronting that roadway, and not really having any danger of on-street parking or anything in front of a house, then we might be able to vary the standards, eliminate curb and gutter, create essentially it's more like a shoulder section through there. I think that would be, that's certainly something we worked out at preliminary plat. Having the roadway connection through there, if we can get that defined as being in there, I think that satisfies some of the comments I'm hearing from the board.
And we'd like to go ahead and make that gesture. We're fine with what Joel just said.
Okay.
If we can come to agreement to modify that road at that point in time to where it's less, so we don't have to put as much money into it, that's fine. Absolutely. It has to be the 20 feet, you've already stated that. We were thinking earlier in our discussions that 12 or 15 was going to be enough. We didn't realize it was 20, but we do now.
Yeah, I'm all for helping you.
That's fine.
Yeah,
We're
that
good
sounds
with
good.
it. So I guess what we're saying is we'll just leave the sketch plan alone. It's basically like it was to begin with.
Okay.
Is that fair, Joel?
You good?
All right. I move we hold this sketch plan application. So we don't need it, do we?
No, at this point you really would not need to, or you can basically approve it as presented with a modification that the roadway will connect, but the format of the road
All right, we can do
could
that.
be less than standard.
Let me withdraw what I moved. And
Okay. Go
Can I
ahead.
make a motion that
Absolutely.
we amend the sketch plan request to show that there will be a connection there, and it will be a modified road section pending agreement with city fire engineering and planning. I make that
And there's a
as
second.
an amendment.
All in favor? Opposed, like sign. All right, let's skip back to,
That was the amendment. Let's do the
yes.
whole thing.
So then, for the whole, resolution number 4 then.
Right.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you for correcting me.
Back to 3.
Back to 3. Could somebody read that in? Reuben, you want to read it?
Resolution, rezoning request from R3 to R5, County Road 4, Bonner Vista Boulevard. The Oak Bonner Vista LLC petition of March 20, 2014, whereas the Oak Bonner Vista LLC is the owner of the property described in Attach A and shown in Attach B, and whereas the property to be rezoned is located inside the city limits of County Road 4 at the Bonner Vista, and whereas the petitioner wishes to rezone the property from R3 single-family residential to R5 patio garden home, and whereas a public hearing of the proposed zoning was held by the Prattville Planning Commission on March 20, 2014. Now therefore be resolved that the City of Prattville Planning Commission hereby recommend the rezoning of said property from R3 to R5. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
There's a motion. Second. We have discussion. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Let's move on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank you.
All right, we've got. Yeah. All right, the corner subdivision plot 1A at 105 Capri Court.
I think that Just take
Hey, how are you?
it takes a simple motion, so let's hear
Okay.
what Guthrie's got. Hey, Guthrie.
There you go.
Okay, hi.
I hadn't seen you in a while.
Been a while. I'd like to be more often. I'm Guthrie Jeffcoat with Jeffcoat Engineers and Surveyors, representing Mr. William Stevens, and I have Linda Smith, the realtor, representing Mr. Stevens in case there's any questions that I can't answer for you. Have all of you got copies of this subdivision? I didn't
Yes.
make it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you know, there was a time when 6 lots were platted on Capri Court, known as Carter Subdivision. And at a separate time, Carter Road Subdivision to the east of it was platted, and there developed a remnant partial of land that was not buildable. And my client has purchased that, or somehow he owns it, plus he owns a triangular piece of property on Gin Shop Hill Road that's not buildable, and the net result is he wants to include all that, replat the 2 lots 3 and 4 into 3A and 4A, and include those 3 remnants, or 2 remnants that he's really, and not creating any more lots, not developing anything more in the way of traffic. In fact, one of the things we already agreed to add, I don't think we've even mentioned it with Joel and them, but we don't plan to have access to Gin Shop Hill Road. That would make it a double frontage lot, and that wouldn't be good. I'll commit that we will add a note to deny access on Gin Shop Hill Road. We've made a lot of corrections and changes at the request of Joel and George, and if we've missed any, we certainly will comply by doing so before we submit the plat for recording. Be happy to try to answer any questions if I can.
Where does the applicant's house sit on lot 3A, 4A?
Well, it's not one on 4A. Lot 3A does have an existing residence.
His house is on 3A. Okay, that's fine.
4A is empty.
Yeah, 4A is empty.
Go, do you have a question?
Yes, the property that's you're going to add back to it on Gin Shop Hill Road, that triangular, and the other square. What you going to use that for?
It'll just become a part of the lot, see?
The lots
because,
themselves?
Yeah, you can't really tell that it's a remnant by being out there.
Okay.
It's it'll be used for the same lot, so there won't be any creations of new lots as far as buildable lots.
Okay. Good deal.
The way of getting rid of the land that was sitting there, I might say.
And what 2 lots are you gonna build now? 3 and 4?
The 3 and 4 will be changed into 3A and 4A with additional acreage, additional land. That dashed portion that you see on the back side of 3A and 4A has been added to 03 and 04. And the same is true of that dashed in triangular portion. It's been added to make a lot 4A, so we make larger lots.
Okay.
It's been Never Land for
Right.
years.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We have a motion.
I'll move that we approve the proposed with a stipulation that Mr. Jeffcoat mentioned of no access to Gin Shop Hill Road and the other things that he agreed to with planning with.
And I noted that Chief Johnson did make a second on that. All in favor of said motion, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Next item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guthrie. All right, the,
Nice bill, dude.
Hey,
our last item on the agenda is Medical Center Drive, lots 4A and 5A. Owner Jimmy Goodson, and yes, sir.
Sir, you have another replat. It's as most of these replats are, an adjustment of a lot line. You can see between lots 4 and 5 of the Interstate Park plat, number 1, there is a dashed line that shows there. That is the present line as it exists today. They are basically rotating the bearings on that center line, that dividing property line, and straightening making it into a 9-degree line from the rear property line.
Jimmy Goodson owns this, is that right?
Yes.
Mr. Goodson's present if you have any questions, but the city recommends approval of this replat. There is an existing slab on 4A. Both lots. It's actually both lots, as Mr. Goodson said.
Both lots.
And this property line will not impact that. It actually makes it a better configuration.
Absolutely. Is there a motion? And a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Is there any other business, miscellaneous, anything, comments, anything that you need from us, y'all?
Yes, sir. Be glad to get with the committee on the Cobb Jones property and
Okay.
try to set up a time.
That would be great.
Thank you very much.
Meeting adjourned. I'm done.
Good time. Hey, before I